Hello, Beckley. I'm Brian Bowyer, and I just rode into town about an hour ago. I'm from Beckley originally, but I currently live in Ohio. And sometimes when people find out where I'm from, they'll be like, dude, is it true that you guys fuck your cousins in West Virginia? I'll be like, sometimes, but I mainly just fuck my dad and my brother. My mom gets jealous. She's like, come on, guys, I want some dick too. I'm just joking, Mom. I don't really fuck my dad or my brother or my cousins. I am from West Virginia, however, originally, but I've lived throughout the United States, and I currently live in a small city called Marion, Ohio. Now, you may be asking yourself, why the fuck does he live in Marion? And that's a good question. Like I said, I have lived throughout the United States, but many years ago, after attending Watkins Film School in Nashville, I moved back to West Virginia and bought a house here in Beckley. And after a while, it just got too fucking crazy at my house. I'm talking sheer insanity. Stuff I can't even talk about on this stage. I have an autobiography available worldwide if you'd like to read about any of that absolute lunacy, but I'm not trying to sell you a book. I am 51 years old and I have plenty of money in savings. Anyway, one of my ex-girlfriends, and I have plenty of those too, by the way, and I still get along with all of my ex-girlfriends, contacted me. And she is a recovering heroin addict. And she had left my house about a year before because she couldn't deal with the insanity. And she ended up leaving the state of West Virginia. And I told her that I was thinking about leaving the state of West Virginia, about just moving to a place where no one knew me, some place I could just write and work in complete anonymity. And she was like, why don't you come here to Marion, Ohio? I was like, where the fuck is Marion, Ohio? She said, it's about an hour away from Columbus. Then she told me that her parents had moved there from Columbus and that she had gone there after leaving the state of West Virginia. And I was like, okay. So that's what I did. I sold the house to my brother, who owns the restaurant next door, Mickey's Pizza, because when he found out I was leaving, he was like, well, dude, if you're leaving, I want the house because I don't want anyone else living that close to my restaurant. So he just wrote me a check for the exact amount that I had paid for the house. Then I put that money on top of the money they already had in savings, and I moved out there to Ohio. And I like it. And although I have money in savings, I also work, of course, so that I never have to touch any of that money that I have in savings. And I have been working at an automotive factory for the past several years. We make brakes for Honda, but I don't work on any of the assembly lines. I am always either by myself or with one other person in one of the three drive shaft cells, either the MDXL, the RDXL, or the TLXL, and I love it. When I'm by myself, I can just work on whatever book I'm currently working on in my head. I mentioned that autobiography earlier, but I also write horror fiction and crime fiction. So I also have several horror novels and crime novels available. Anyway, the other night at work, a lady stopped me in the cafeteria and said, do you always wear a fucking hat? I was like, not always, but frequently, because I am usually cold. She said, why are you always cold? You got low blood or something? I said, lady, I'm 6'5", I weigh 145, and I have no hair. Wearing a hat helps keep me warm. She was like, why don't you eat a fucking cheeseburger? I was like, because I like Italian food and Chinese food and ice cream. Ice cream is my favorite. She was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're always cold and your favorite food is ice cream? I was like, but I love ice cream. I just wear long sleeve shirts and hats and hoods. It's all good. The lady rolled her eyes and walked away. Then another lady told me, some people are so fucking rude. I just thought the whole thing was funny. Anyway, later that night, I was working in the MDXL with a guy named Ian. And a lot of the times when I'm working with another person, I will just glance over them and randomly start spitting the lyrics of whatever song pops into my head, which is usually either old school metal or hip hop. And the other person is usually way younger than me, and they usually have no idea what I'm talking about. But Ian's my age. He's old, like me. Well, almost. Ian is a year younger than me. He is 50, and I am 51. And at some point, a Notorious B.I.G. song popped into my head. So I just glanced over at Ian out of the blue and went, armed and dangerous. Ain't too many can bang with us. We just sitting here trying to win, trying not to sin. High off weed and lots of gin. So much smoke need oxygen. Steadily counting them Benjamins, homie. You'd shit too if you knew what this game would do to you. Been in this shit since 92. Look at all the bullshit I've been through. So-called beef with you know who. Fucked a few female stars or two. Shit. You tell me, who's the killer? Me or you? And Ian was like, dude, what are you talking about? I said, you don't listen to Biggie Smalls, man? He was like, who? I said, man, never mind. But then, sometime later, I thought, let's try something different. So I glanced over at Ian again and went, lashing out the action, returning the reaction. We are ripped and torn away. Hypnotizing power, crushing all that cower. Finish it. Ian was like, dude, what is that? I went, smashing through the boundaries. Lunacy has found me. Cannot stop the pounding out aggression. Turns it to obsession. Cannot kill the family. Battery is found in me. Ian was like, dude, is that Metallica? I said, yeah, man, Battery, the first song of Master of Puppets, 1986. He was like, man, I thought that sounded like Metallica. Are they still making music? I said, yeah, dude. They dropped an album not too long ago called 72 Seasons. He was like, is it any good? I said, yeah, man, it's pretty good. The first single was called Lux Eterna. He was like, Lux Eterna. I said, yeah, man, it's Latin for eternal light. And it sounds vintage. I'm talking, it straight up sounds like something that could have been on their debut album from 1983, Kill 'Em All. He was like, hell yeah, man, I have to remember to look that up. I said, dude, don't even worry about it. I'll send you a link. And, of course, I went home and forgot all about it. But the next day, when I woke up, I remembered. And I was like, man, I still need to send Ian Lux Eterna. So I went to YouTube, copied the link, and then sent it to him on Facebook Messenger. Then Ian messaged me back soon thereafter talking about, dude, you were right. That is killer. That sounds just like the old stuff. So then I got in my car that afternoon to drive to work. I worked second shift, 3 p.m. to midnight. And I grabbed Kill 'Em All from one of the CD sleeves on the back seat, put it in the CD player, and listened to the first 3 songs on the way to work. Hit the Lights, The Four Horsemen, and Motor Breath. And oh my God, that shit sounded so fucking good in the car, man. I had not listened to that album in a while. The production on Kill 'Em All is so raw that it sounds like Metallica is right there in the room with you, which is part of that album's charm. Anyway, I got to work and found out that I was working with Ian again in the MDX sale. And I said, dude, have you ever noticed that James Hetfield lists the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse incorrectly in the lyrics of Metallica's song, The Four Horsemen? Ian was like, no. I was like, yeah, man. In the song, the lyrics go, time has taken its toll on you, the lines that crack your face. Famine, your body it has worn through, withered in every place. Pestilence, for what you have endured and what you have put others through. Death, deliverance for you for sure. Now there's nothing you can do. So in the song, the lyrics list the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse as time, famine, pestilence, and death. But in the Bible, it's war, famine, pestilence, and death. Well, technically, in the Bible, it's conquest, famine, pestilence, and death. But in the Bible, conquest in that context means war. But out here, conquest can mean other things. But war just means war. So when I'm referring to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, I always just say war, famine, pestilence, and death. So Hetfield got 3 of the 4 right with famine, pestilence, and death. But time and war have completely different meanings. So he got that part wrong. But it's still an awesome song. And Ian was like, so you know a lot about the Bible? I said, oh, hell yeah, dude. I was raised in a strict fundamentalist Christian household, and I fucking hated it. Which is why, after I became a teenage drug dealer with a lot of money and a fake ID, I was usually living in hotels because I could only take my parents in small doses. And Ian was like, so you ever think about Armageddon and the apocalypse and the Antichrist? I said, not really. But I did. Once upon a time, in 1984, when I was 11 years old, for a brief period of time, think that Prince was the Antichrist. And Ian was like, Prince? The singer? I said, yeah, man. You were alive back then. You know how it was. We all thought the world was going to end. I mean, we were all just waiting for it. It was almost like a subconscious thing or something. We didn't know when the world would end, but we all thought that by the year 2000, at the latest, all of this would be gone. I mean, we legitimately believed that 1999, at the latest, would be our last year on planet Earth. Prince even wrote a song about it called 1999. They say 2000 parties over, oops, out of time. So tonight I'm going to party like it's 1999. And back then, a lot of people spent a lot of time trying to figure out who the Antichrist was. And one of the things they would look for is a person with 6 letters in each of their 3 names for 666. A lot of people thought President Reagan was the Antichrist for that very reason, because his name was Ronald Wilson Reagan. Ronald, R-O-N-A-L-D, 6 letters. Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N, 6 letters. And Reagan, R-E-A-G-A-N, 6 letters. But I didn't buy it. The Bible said that the Antichrist would be charismatic and that a lot of people would love him and follow him anywhere. And I was like, man, ain't nobody following Ronald Wilson Reagan's 188 million-year-old crusty ass anywhere. I couldn't even believe he got elected president. I mean, I was 11 years old and thought I knew everything. But that's what you do when you're 11, right? You think you know everything. But Prince was very charismatic. And a lot of people loved him. And a lot of people would have followed him anywhere. And he also had the whole 6 letters in each of his 3 names thing going for him with Prince Rogers Nelson. Prince, P-R-I-N-C-E, 6 letters. Rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S, 6 letters. Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N, 6 letters. And I also knew that, according to the Bible, Lucifer was one of the most beautiful angels in heaven before he got cast out, and that he was a master of music. Back then, a lot of people used to say that the media itself was just the devil. Back then, in the 1980s, a lot of people used to say that the media was just Satan controlling the airwaves with his music. And Prince certainly controlled the airwaves with his music in 1984 when he dropped not only the movie Purple Rain, but the soundtrack. And there's a song on that soundtrack called Darling Nikki. And it's one of these songs that made Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore, form the PMRC, the Parents Music Resource Center, which was the organization that was responsible for putting all those explicit warning, parental advisory stickers on the albums, which only made the kids want to listen to the music even more. So the whole thing was stupid. And back then, a lot of us had whatever albums we liked on both cassette and vinyl. We had the cassettes for our boom boxes and our Walkmans or whatever. And we had the vinyl albums so that we could read the lyric sheets and the liner notes and look at all the photos or whatever. So I had both the cassette and the vinyl album of the Purple Rain soundtrack. And there was a backward message. There is a backward message at the end of the song, Darling Nikki. Now, if you only heard the song in the movie, you wouldn't know that. But if you had the soundtrack at home like I did and listened to it, you heard it. And a lot of people may have heard that and just thought it was Prince speaking gibberish, but I knew immediately that it was a backward message. Dude, this was 1984. This was the height of the entire satanic panic thing, and we fucking loved that shit, man. I mean, if we even heard rumor of an artist or a band having a backward message in one of their songs, we got excited and came running. So that's what I did. I went to my younger brother, and I was like, dude, there's a backward message on this Purple Rain soundtrack. And he was like, fuck yeah. So we put the album on the record player, put the turntable in neutral, dropped the needle on the vinyl, and began spinning that bitch in reverse so that we could listen to the backward message. And lo and behold, Prince said, hello, how are you? I am fine, for I know that the Lord is coming soon. Coming soon. Ha, 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 ha. And I went, dude, Prince is the fucking Antichrist. He just told us all that he is happy, that the rapture will be happening soon, and that God will come down here and call all the Christians home to be with him and Jesus and all the angels in heaven, allowing Prince to rise as the Antichrist and rule planet Earth. And my brother was like, dude, you're fucking right, man. Prince is the goddamn Antichrist. And we fucking loved it. We fucking love Prince, man. I still do. I miss that motherfucker. Now, of course, I didn't believe that shit for very long. Maybe a week or so later, I was like, man, that's some stupid shit. Prince ain't the fucking Antichrist. But yeah, for a brief moment in time in 1984, when I was 11 years old, I thought Prince was the Antichrist. Just a silly story that I shared with a guy at work, and I thought I would share it with you. But check this shit out. A few nights later, I was working by myself in the RDX cell, and I got tagged in a video on TikTok by a book reviewer, by Ricky at Ricky's Rockin' Reviews. He had just finished reading one of my horror novels that I mentioned earlier, and he was like, "Brian Bowyer, I have noticed that a lot of your characters spend a lot of time in basements, and I'm wondering about the significance of basements in your fiction. And I'm also wondering if you, Brian Bowyer, have spent a lot of time in basements, and if so, would you tell us one of your basement stories?" I was like, man, that's a good question. I never even thought about that. Basements. Yeah, man, I got a lot of basement stories. Well, let's see here, Ricky. My first memory of a basement is being raped in one at age 4. Is that the significance of basements in my fiction? I have no idea. And I'm sure there are many people in 21st century America and all throughout the world in all prior centuries with far worse stories of sexual abuse than mine. But that is my first memory of a basement, being raped in one at age 4. And it happened a few times, actually. What happened was my mother's father, my grandfather Bill, died before I was born, so I never knew him. Then my grandmother remarried when I was 4. She married a man named Leland, and he had 2 mentally challenged teenage children, an 18-year-old daughter named Jean and a 16-year-old son named Lee. And Jean was slightly more mentally challenged than Lee, but Lee was significantly mentally challenged. He was also morbidly obese, so he was way bigger than me. Plus, he was 16 and I was 4. And they all moved into my grandmother's house, the grandmother to whom my mother was very close. So my mother would take my younger brother and me over there frequently so that she could visit her mother. And Lee would take me down into the basement and rape me. Why didn't I tell anyone? Because I knew at age 4 that it would hurt my mother more than it hurt me. But I did get sick of it. And so one day I grabbed a butcher's knife from my grandmother's kitchen. And I took it with me down into the basement and brandished it. And I told Lee that if he ever touched me again, I would fucking kill him. And he believed me. And he never touched me again. And that was that. Okay, fast forward 2 years. So I'm 6 years old now, and my younger brother is 4. I was in 1st grade, but he hadn't even started kindergarten yet. And one night, he attacked me in my sleep. We'd been sharing a bedroom on the 1st floor at our parents' house. Now, our parents had a nice, finished basement. But my brother and I almost never went down there. Our mom did laundry down there in the basement. And she and our father often watched TV in this huge family room down there in the basement. But my brother and I shared a bedroom on the 1st floor. And one night, I was dead asleep. And he started screaming, "Give me back my fucking milk." I opened my eyes, and the motherfucker was standing over me. I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Then he started punching me in the face, man. Still screaming, "Give me back my fucking milk." I was like, "Mom, Dad, come get this motherfucker." So they took him to a hospital. And it was discovered that he had what is called encephalitis. I had never even heard of it. It's an inflammation of the brain that makes your brain swell inside your skull, and it causes hallucinations. And he started having recurring bouts of encephalitis throughout the next few years of his childhood. And it kills some people, and it causes permanent brain damage in some people. But he was fine. It just went away after a few years, and now he's this genius who's owned his own restaurant for the past 28 years. But that's not all he does. I mean, my brother is super smart. I could write whole volumes of books about my crazy, intelligent brother. But yeah, he has owned Mickey's Pizza right here in Beckley, West Virginia since 1997. He took over that restaurant when he was 22. Anyway, fast forward another year. So I'm 7 years old now, and my younger brother is 5. I was in 2nd grade, and he was a kindergartner. And one day, we got off the school bus, and our house had burned to the fucking ground. Our parents were at work, and we had been at school. At 7 years of age, I was my younger brother's babysitter. At 7 years of age, I was basically a young adult. Anyway, the driveway was long, and it was filled with fire trucks and cop cars, and the house was completely fucking gone. The house had been heated by a modern furnace, but our mom and dad also had this old-fashioned wood-burning / coal-burning stove down there in the basement in that family room, and the fire inspectors determined that the stove is what caused the fire. Our parents had insurance, so they built another house on the property, but we had to stay elsewhere while it was being built. After it was finished, as we were moving in, my parents asked me if I wanted my own bedroom. And I was like, fuck yeah, because A, I wanted to get away from my psycho younger brother, and B, who doesn't want their own bedroom? So they gave me a room downstairs in the basement. Now, the basement was only partially submerged in the earth because the house was built split level into a hillside. But the room they gave me was in a corner of the basement that was completely submerged in the earth. So there were no windows. And when I turned the lights off, it would be pitch black, and I fucking loved it. I loved sleeping that way. Plus, you could take posters, floor to the ceiling, all the way around without any windows getting in the way. So I always had a lot of heavy metal posters on all the walls, floor to ceiling. And there were drop tiles for a ceiling. So you could hide drugs and money and guns and stuff up there, which was fucking awesome. But that was later. Because when I first moved down there into the basement, I was only 7 years old. But later, after I became a drug dealer at age 12, that drop-tiled ceiling definitely came in handy. Anyway, I started drinking when I was 11, and I was an alcoholic by age 12. And I became a drug dealer at age 12 to finance my addiction. I had several older cousins who were members of the Avengers Motorcycle Club, and they were all drug dealers. And they sold me drugs for cheap. And I turned around and sold cocaine in the 1980s for crazy profits. So I always had a lot of money. And a lot of the times, I'd be living in hotels with fake IDs. But when I wasn't living in hotels, I'd be staying at my parents' house in the basement. And there were two entrances into the basement. One on either side of the house where it was built split level into that hillside on the back. And I had keys to both doors. So I could come and go as I pleased at any time, day or night. At 12 years of age, my parents could not control me, and they knew that. They didn't even try. So when I was there, I always had a lot of older friends in and out of the basement, and older customers in and out of the basement, and older girls in and out of the basement. Sometimes there would be girls going out one door of the basement while other girls came in through the other door. And of all the countless, insane stories I could tell you about that basement, I'm going to tell you one that is memorable to me because of the viciousness with which a mother punched her daughter in the face down there in my old bedroom in that basement. I'd been out the night before with a girl named Alice and her friend Stephanie. I was 14 at the time, too young to drive, so I had one of my older friends driving us around. Years later, Alice's friend Stephanie ended up getting her fucking head blown off with a shotgun by a member of the Avengers Motorcycle Club for cheating on him. But on the night I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure that Stephanie, like me, was 14. Anyway, Alice had to be home that night at midnight. So I had my friend drop Alice off at her mom's house. Then Stephanie immediately turned to me and was like, I don't have to be home tonight. Can I just stay with you? I was like, yeah, sure. So we went back to whatever house party we'd been at. Then I took Stephanie to my parents' basement around dawn. And we passed out a little later. And then the doorbell rang upstairs. But we never heard that, of course, because we were passed out. And my parents were not home. But my younger brother was home, and he heard the doorbell. So he got up and opened the door. And it was Stephanie's mom and Alice standing on the front porch. After Stephanie had not come home the night before, her mom had gone to Alice and been like, where the fuck is Stephanie? She was with you last night, and she never came home. And Alice was like, I don't know. Last time I saw her, she was with Brian. And I just thought Brian was going to take her home. And my brother had no idea that Stephanie was there because his bedroom was upstairs on the first floor, and we were downstairs in the basement. So he let them in the house, and they came downstairs and started pounding on my bedroom door. And there was music playing because I always slept with music on. And Stephanie was like, oh, my God, Brian, that's my mom. She's fucking crazy. You don't understand. I was like, whatever, man. Just go hide in the closet. Because I had this huge walk-in closet. So then I got up, opened the door, and Stephanie's mom was like, where's Stephanie? But I never even had a chance to answer, man. She shoved me out of the way, started looking around the bedroom, opened that closet door, found Stephanie. Then she punched her so hard in the fucking face, she knocked her the fuck out. Then she grabbed her by the hair and dragged her out of the bedroom. I turned to Alice, and I was like, God damn, was that necessary? But Alice was pissed off. She was like, I can't believe you fucked Stephanie. Then she turned around and stormed out of the room. Anyway, I hope that gave Ricky at Ricky's Rockin' Reviews some insight into the significance of basements in my fiction. And then, a few nights later, I was working in the TLX cell with a new guy, way younger than me. maybe half my age, if that. And he had just gotten out of prison. And he had heard that I had been in prison. I was like, nah, dude, I retired from crime when I turned 18. Before that, however, I was in and out of juvenile prisons. He said, what were you in juvenile prison for? I said, all kinds of stuff. I was a teenage drug dealer, but I was also involved in other criminal activities. And because I was young, brash, and reckless, I spent a lot of the 1980s incarcerated in juvenile correctional facilities. He said, dude, tell me one of your juvenile prison stories. I was like, man, I got a lot of those. Well, let's see here. I could tell you one about a girl named Tish. You want to hear one about a girl named Tish? He was like, hell yeah, man, let's hear it. I said, okay. I first met Tish in 1989 when I was 16 in a juvenile prison called the Salem Industrial Home for Youth in Salem, West Virginia, which is also where I began reading horror fiction at age 16. There was a correctional officer there named Moscar, an Italian dude who happened to be a huge horror fan. And he started bringing me books every day by anyone who had published anything in the genre at that time, which was 1989. Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Clive Barker, Robert McCammon, Richard Lehman, Jack Ketchum. The list goes on and on. Girls also were incarcerated in Salem. Picture Salem as a sprawling college campus with a lot of large brick buildings, all of it surrounded by 12 feet of chain link fencing with 3 feet of razor wire on top of that. It was maximum security. The girls were locked up in a building with 2 halls called Standard 1 and Standard 2. And the boys were locked up in a building with 2 halls called Jones 1 and Jones 2. But the boys and girls commingled quite a bit. We didn't go to the cafeteria together, but we did go to the school building together. And we often found ourselves in the gymnasium together and the library building and the computer lab. Yes, there was a computer lab in 1989. Primitive, but it was there. And we often found ourselves outside together if the weather was nice. And if the correctional officers liked you, they facilitated alone time for the boys and the girls who were dating. So it wasn't too bad. The first girl I started dating was in there for murder. I don't remember what her real name was, but everyone called her VO5 because some of the other girls caught her masturbating with an Alberto VO5 shampoo bottle before I even got there. She was older than me, almost 18, and I had just turned 16, so we didn't date long. Then VO5 turned 18 and got sent to the women's penitentiary to begin serving the rest of her life sentence. The second girl I started dating also happened to be in there for murder. She was my age, 16, about a month older than me. And she was this sweet, shy, really pretty girl named Tish. And she didn't even seem like she belonged there. Then I found out that Tish had never killed anyone. She had simply been with her boyfriend, a much older boyfriend, when he killed someone. And they charged her as an adult. They offered Tish a reduced sentence if she would testify against him, but she refused. And they threw the book at her. Gave her life without parole. Oh, and that boyfriend for whom she threw her life away, he never contacted her again. I just thought the whole thing was sad. Anyway, 8 months passed and my time was up. It's time for me to go home. I was still 16. Are you going to call me? Tish said. Are you going to write to me? Are you going to come and see me? Yes, yes, and yes, baby, I said. But I never called her. I never wrote her a letter. I did not go see her, but I wasn't out long. I got arrested soon thereafter. Then I got locked up in Salem once again. And of course, Tish was still there, as she would be, until she turned 18, when she would be sent to the women's penitentiary to begin serving the rest of her life sentence. You're back, Tish said when I returned. I missed you so much, baby. I missed you too. I hope you're not mad, she said, but I was so happy when I heard you were coming back. And of course I wasn't mad. Tish and I picked up right where we had left off. And I resumed reading horror fiction for the next 8 months. And then, once again, my time was up. It was time for me to go home. I was 17 now. Are you going to call me this time? Tish said. Are you going to write to me? Are you going to come and see me? Yes, yes, and yes, baby, I said. But I never called her. I never wrote her a letter. I did not go see her. I went right back to my fast lane lifestyle. And Salem was 3 hours away from my hometown of Beckley, West Virginia. Anyway, I was 17, but I didn't live with my parents. I was selling drugs again and living in hotels on Harper Road. One day, however, for whatever reason, I stopped by my parents' house on a weekday. My parents were at work, my younger brother was still in school, and the telephone rang. This was 1990. We didn't have caller ID in 1990. In 1990, if the telephone rang, to find out who was calling, you had to answer the phone and say hello. So that's what I did, and it was Tish calling from Salem. Brian, I miss you so much. I miss you too. Why haven't you called me? I'm sorry, Tish. Why haven't you come to see me? The truth was, I had not been planning to go see her. I don't know if you've ever been incarcerated before, but when you're locked up, you make a lot of friends, but then you get out and you never see those people again. Or at least that's been my experience anyway. But then she told me that she was having trouble sleeping, that she would be turning 18 in a couple of months, and that she was terrified of being sent to the women's penitentiary to begin serving the rest of her life sentence. I wish I had some sleeping pills, she said. I just wish I could sleep. And then, just like that, I knew that I would be going to see her. I hated the thought of Tish not being able to sleep, and I had the ability to get her any kind of sleeping pill she wanted. I'll be there Saturday, I told her. What kind of pills do you need? The only ones that really work for me, she said, are Seconal and Nimbutal. Think you can get me some of those? I'm sure I can. I said, just hang tight. I'll be there Saturday. Thank you so much, Brian. You'll never know how much this means to me. I had never heard of Seconal or Nimbutal, but I got off the phone with Tish, called my cousin Dominic at the Avengers Clubhouse, and he told me that I could pick up a bottle of each the following day. Then I ran into my friend Tracy later that night, and I said, dude, you want to go to Salem this weekend if I pay for all the drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, gasoline, you name it? And he was like, fuck yeah, road trip. So I picked the drugs up at the Avengers Clubhouse the next day. Then Tracy and I traveled 3 hours to Salem on Saturday. We listened to Slayer, drank whiskey, and did cocaine the entire trip. By the time we got there, we were wasted. Tracy went into the cafeteria with me for the visitation. There was a guard nearby. I don't remember his name, but of course we knew each other and we had always gotten along. He was reading a paperback novel and didn't pay any attention to us at all. And Tish was acting so weird. I'm talking flat out bizarre is the best way I can describe it. I had never seen her like that. I figured it probably had to be the insomnia, but it made me a little uncomfortable nevertheless. Apparently it made Tracy uncomfortable too, because he was like, look, dude, I'm going to head on back to the car and drink some more whiskey. Take your time. I was actually relieved when the guard looked up from his book and said, 5 more minutes. Need to wrap this up. I had a lubricated, tied-off condom in my pocket. In the condom was a 100-count Tylenol bottle. In the bottle were 50 Seconals, 50 Nimbutals, and enough cotton to ensure that the pills wouldn't rattle. I took the pills out of my pocket, then leaned in close to Tish and used my back to shield her from the guard while she slipped the bottle down her pants and up inside herself. Thank you so much, she whispered. You'll never know how much this means to me. And that was that. Tracy and I left and headed back to Beckley. Then I got locked up in Salem again, less than 2 months later, for the dumbest reason. Here's what happened. I was walking the streets of East Beckley one night with my friend, Cousin It. His real name was Ronnie Smith, but people called him Cousin It because of his hair and his resemblance to a character on a TV show. He's been dead for years, but at the time he was 20 and I was 17. It was very late, probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had just left the Nut House for some reason. The Nut House was just a nickname for a building called Tanner Apartments that my friend Billy Young's grandmother owned. It was 3 stories tall, but it also had an attic and a full basement. There was 1 kitchen and 1 bathroom on each of the 3 floors that was shared by all the people who rented the 5 bedrooms on each level, and the place was always packed with junkies, drug dealers, alcoholics, prostitutes, you name it. At 17, I had been using the Nut House as a sort of criminal headquarters for years. It was right across the street from the state police headquarters on Eisenhower Drive. So they would be watching us with binoculars, and we would be watching them with binoculars, and cops raided the place all the time. But they never found my ever-changing stockpile of stolen guns up in the attic. They never even went up into the attic, actually, which could only be accessed through a trap door in the ceiling of Billy's closet on the 3rd floor. Anyway, I don't remember why Ronnie Smith and I left the Nut House at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I do remember what we were arguing about as we walked those otherwise empty residential streets. Like me, Cousin It was a huge Clive Barker fan, and we had been arguing over which of his novels was the best. Ronnie's favorite was Weave World. Mine was The Great and Secret Show. Then a car stopped right beside us on the street, and a man behind the steering wheel put his window down and said, "Is there a problem?" For no reason. I saw a gun next to him on the passenger seat. I had no idea why he stopped and asked us that, but I pulled my gun, a Taurus PT-92 9mm from the waistband of my jeans, shoved it to his face and said, "Not unless you want one, motherfucker." He stepped on the gas and drove away. And that was that. We didn't think anything else about it. The next thing I knew, it was daylight, and Ronnie and I were annihilated. We were back at the Nut House in the kitchen on the 3rd floor, drinking whiskey with 2 other dudes at 8 o'clock in the morning. At some point, we all realized that we were hungry. I volunteered to go to the Super America gas station down the street and get us some food. They all gave me some money, told me what they wanted, and I took off walking. Super America was only about a minute or two away. It was right across the street from the state police headquarters. So I didn't think anything of all the cop cars in the parking lot. There were always cop cars in the parking lot. That was nothing new. I had no idea they were looking for me. I was fucked up, but I wasn't staggering or anything. I had a gun in my waistband, but I always carried a gun. I wore baggy clothes. They couldn't see my gun. I wasn't worried about those cops. I walked into the store, got everyone's food, and as soon as I stepped outside, the cops surrounded me. "Freeze, Bowyer, hands in the goddamn air." They took my gun, handcuffed me, and placed me under arrest. I was like, what the fuck am I being arrested for? They told me that the man who had stopped his car earlier and asked us if there was a problem for no reason whatsoever was an off-duty police officer. I did not know that man, but he knew exactly who I was. He had gone straight to the police station and pressed charges against me after I shoved my gun into his face. I said, "Man, I should have shot that motherfucker." That's what I told the arresting officer. Then I said, "Fine, man, take me to Salem. I'll hang out with Tish and read horror fiction. I'll be 18 in a couple of months. Then I'm retiring from all this crime bullshit anyway." My first day back at Salem, Moscar stepped into my cell laughing. "You just can't stay away from this place, can you?" He was holding a thick hardback book. "Is that for me?" "Yes. Stephen King, 4 Past Midnight. Have you read it yet?" "No, I haven't." He handed me the book. "It's his latest release. I just finished it, so it's all yours. You're going to love it." "Thanks," I said, eager to read the latest from Stephen King. Moscar turned to leave, but then he turned back around. "Oh, I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am about Tish. I know you two were close." I looked up from the book. "What are you talking about?" Moscar cocked his head. "You haven't heard? Tish is dead, man." "Dead?" "Yes. I assumed you would have heard." "Nah, dude. What happened?" "Suicide, I guess," he said. "Unless she just accidentally swallowed enough barbiturates to sedate a fucking squadron. No idea how she got those in here, Brian." Dude, I didn't know. I swear to God, it never crossed my mind. She told me she couldn't sleep. I'm sure she couldn't sleep, Brian. The prospect of spending the rest of your life in prison at 18 years of age would make anyone have trouble falling asleep. You do believe me, though, right? That I didn't know? I do believe you, Brian. And if I were Tish, I would have done the same thing. And if I were you, I would have done the same thing, even if I had known what Tish was going to do. Don't beat yourself up about it. Enjoy the book. I did my time, and they turned me loose when I turned 18. And that was the day I officially retired from a life of crime. And that is another reason I love my job at the factory, because I get to tell stories to other people when I'm working with other people. And speaking of other people, I'd like to thank you people for being so cool to me here on this stage. You people fucking rule, and your city rules too. Have a great night.